This week in Pure Reinvention.
It's easier to ignore those things that are going on that you don't want to acknowledge, you don't want to own. And when you start digging into the core of who you are and what's going on, you're going to find some stuff that you don't like.
Pure Reinvention Podcast, episode 41, with Deb Hart, FM radio personality and podcast host.
Engage, disrupt, adapt, repeat. You're listening to Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious people.
Welcome to this edition of Pure Reinvention, the podcast for curious individuals. We're excited today to bring you a little different twist on the Pure Reinvention journey. We are going to be talking with Deb Hart, a local radio personality, and we have brought our Pure Reinvention team with us to also discuss what we've learned as a part of this podcast. I'd like to introduce to you Josh Lord. Say hi, Josh.
Hi, everyone.
Misty Miller.
Hello.
Jody Schaefer.
Nice to be here.
Mr. Will Carlson.
Good to be on this side of the mic.
And, of course, I'm Mike Bills. We're really excited for you to take a few moments, listen to the Deb Hart interview, and then we'll be back afterwards to discuss all that we have taken in. We're here with our guest, Deb Hart. Hi, Deb.
Hello.
Hey, so we're on this topic of reinvention, and it's kind of appears like you might know a little bit about this subject.
Just my own personal perspective. That's all I can really be a testament to. But I've always been seeking. I've always looked around me for what speaks to my soul, and how can I do things differently to find joy where I wasn't finding joy in my life.
Right.
My father passed when I was 21, and that was devastating to my entire family. And we all have our own stories. We all have our own crises, tragedies, and I didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
I didn't know what to do with all that grief, and I thought I was just supposed to suck it up and pretend like it was okay and get over it. Like people want us to get over grief we don't have, I think, a lot of means in place to process grief where it's okay, and it makes people uncomfortable to talk about death. So, okay, I'm 21, my dad passes. It breaks up my family just in terms of, all families have different dynamics, and it really scattered us. And I didn't know what to do with myself with that grief. And so I drank too much, and I ate too much, and I smoked cigarettes, and I had no purpose in my life. And I was blessed to have a good job in radio, which was fun, and it was exciting. And at the time, 20 some years ago, it was one job when you were on the air in radio, where you were just on the air from 6 until 10 a.m. and then you had the rest of your day to fritter away and go do whatever you wanted, right?
Okay, sure.
So that's a lot of free time to fill with nothing. And we have those regrets. I try not to have regrets, but I think of all that time where now it's such a precious commodity, and I go, the hours I wasted. But I think probably it's part of the process as well.
Part of the discovery.
Yeah. So dealing with my father's passing, and then just kind of finally the family started to come back together, and my younger brother committed suicide. He was only 29, and that was, again, so devastating. And again, you don't know what to do with that. And I'll always remember that moment where I was sitting there. I don't know if this is a conscious choice, and I don't know if, I just remember sitting there at his service, and I could feel my brain start to uncoil. And I thought, I could go away now and not come back. And I thought, no, you've got work to do. Come back.
What a revelation.
It was, and that's been 15, 16 years now. And I didn't know what that work was at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I continued to seek. I continued to look for people, for ideas, for philosophies, for practices that made sense to me.
So now you were open to learning what was next.
Yeah. I didn't know there was a next.
Right.
I just didn't know what to do with myself.
Mm-hmm. Unsettled.
Yeah, I was very unsettled for most of my 20s. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until my 30s, and it was after my brother's suicide that I finally went, I think I need to talk to somebody about this. And thought maybe it's okay if I go to talk therapy. Maybe I'm not crazy, but And I call them up like, is this okay?
Is this what I'm supposed to do?
Is this good? They're like, yeah, I think, probably your sibling's suicide and your father's death and both of them unprocessed grief.
You probably have something to talk about.
Come talk to us, okay? Yeah. And it was good. It was one of the biggest healing factors in my life. I often say that it was talk therapy. It was studying method acting with a group of method actors out at Spotlight Theater. That process was mentally engaging and challenging, and you had to question yourself, and you had to dig in, you had to look at things. And when we dig in, it's the same with talk therapy. It's ugly. Mm-hmm. You're going to find it's easier to ignore those things that are going on that you don't want to acknowledge, you don't want to own. And when you start digging into the core of who you are and what's going on, you're going to find some stuff that you don't like.
Well, and it sounds to me like there's also an expectation that you're going to start behaving differently as a result of this investigation into yourself.
The hope is make better choices. Get your act together, get off the couch. It was this opportunity presented itself to me, and someone said, come join us and come study with us. And I thought, okay. But it's those opportunities when people say, hey, come try this. And I'll go, okay.
Yes, but you were open to it. Yeah. See, the interesting thing that what you're describing is that you, through this series of events, you became open to whatever was next.
Yeah.
Now, you maybe didn't know what that was, but you were opening yourself up to other opportunities to come your way.
Sure.
And as opposed to what we always think in the business world where we have to know all the answers, perhaps the right first step is just to open yourself up to maybe what I am doing isn't as effective as I should be. So then what happened?
I also started going to yoga classes. It's the union of body, mind, and spirit is what yoga is about. And yoga, especially in the West, because of the popularity, it becomes so many things and people have ideas about it that it is what you can allow it to be in your life. And it's helpful to not have a judgment about it until you allow yourself to experience it. My fiance was, when I first met him, I said, you should try yoga. Like I tell everyone I meet within 5 minutes, so you should try yoga. And he's like, you're the third person to say that to me. Okay, I'll give it a try. And he's, a large framed man, and he, I think, maybe thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. And it was challenging. And he loved it. And he still loves it. And it's not just a physical practice. It helps you process your stuff and helps you ask yourself, what's effective in my life and what's not? And what can I let go of that I don't need anymore? And how can I have a beginner's mind when I'm approaching my job, my family, my lifestyle, my personal choices, what I eat, what I drink, what I do, who I spend my time with, what I spend my money on.
So you open up the feedback loop
Yeah.
so that the world can now start to kind of give you some information that maybe we were not open to before. And allow yourself to go on this journey of reinvention.
Sure.
And I'm going to guess that you're not the only one who could really benefit from going through this journey, that we all have to allow ourselves to go on this journey. We can't close the door. We have to say we have to accept the fact that it's okay.
Yeah, we don't have to. It's a choice,
It's a choice.
You can choose to accept it or not. And you can choose to acknowledge that the only constant is change. And you want to talk about the business that I've been in for 25 plus years, FM radio. Well, since they changed the laws in the mid 90s and, you could own more than one FM station in a market, everything changed. Everything changed about the business and how it was done. I frankly would have to sit and think longer than I should about how many owners I've been through. Mercifully, I've maintained the same employment over the past 25 years now. It'll be here in Lansing. That job has also changed a lot over the years. And there have been new owners, new managers, new ways of doing things. You get more obligations piled on with each different incarnation that comes along. And that's just the nature of the beast. And you can either fight it or you can try to have an open mind about it and say, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I grow as an individual? And how can I change my attitude? Because we all resist change.
Well, you had to accept that.
Yeah.
You had to get to the point in your life where you could accept the fact that the opportunities outside of where I am today are probably are perhaps greater than what I understand and realize. And that it's okay for me to let it loose and to let go of what I have in search of what's next. And how do you, in this reinvention process, how do you begin to rectify and understand what is in your control and those factors that are out of your control, and then navigate with that knowledge?
Well, I think the most important thing is understanding that you can't control anything besides yourself.
That's what I was hoping
and
you
your
would
reaction
say.
to what's presented to you. That is the only thing any of us have control over in any aspect of our life.
And yet most people think they are in control of everything. And when you think about a business, and when you think about an association, and you think about trying to accomplish goals,
yes,
in many ways, what we really need to open ourselves up to are whatever opportunities are coming at us. How do we assess those, and how do we convert those into next opportunities, not control what we know today?
Right.
Because truly, the opportunity to grow is in something we haven't even been exposed to yet.
Yeah.
We have to truly be okay knowing that tomorrow is going to be different, instead of tomorrow is going to be the same.
Yeah. And maybe choose to look at it as, this could be a great opportunity for me to shine. This could be a great opportunity for me to grow. Maybe I'll learn something new here. And we have, in some of the new obligations and new expectations with the job that I have, okay, you have to learn how to create web content every day. So there's a lot of grumbling about that at the beginning. I'm like, this is fabulous, wonderful information. I can use this in my own.
Oh, yeah. Apparently you have.
Yeah, I have. It's been great. It's been very valuable in understanding, this would be a college course that you I'm getting it for free.
Absolutely.
Does that mean that, but you know what? Because I have to do it every day, that makes me better at it. So, and because even learning new things every day keeps our minds active and new synapses forming and creates, a healthier brain. So why don't we want that?
So it appears like you use that opportunity to then create Deb Hart's Loving Life.
Yeah, and it's funny, I told you earlier about things that you chase after so hard, and I wanted to do this show. I wanted this show on the air 2 years ago, and I pushed and tried to get a sponsor, and at the time, and it just didn't work out, and finally I let go of it. And 2 years later, they came to me and said, hey, we have a time slot. We'd love to have you fill it with that show that you wanted to do. Okay, that'd be great.
See, what's really interesting in listening to that story is that the concept was right. The methodology for how you were promoting it, perhaps, was more about the control instead of letting it go and letting the opportunity develop on its own, which sounds like it's paralleling the exact same journey that you have experienced in most of your adult life, which is once you kind of let go that you have to control the outcomes actually become greater, yet a little bit more unpredictable. But if I've understood your approach to life is more about the unpredictability of enjoying the entire spectrum of highs and lows, as opposed to controlling the very small middle that most people travel.
And that's not easy. That's a lot of work. It's physically and emotionally exhausting to be honest with ourselves, to own our strengths and our weaknesses. Either we can change it, or we can just accept it and make peace with it. We can forgive ourselves for maybe things we've done that we're not proud of, that we didn't behave at our best self. Forgive ourselves. Forgive those who, we can carry a grudge the rest of our lives. Boy, that's going to show that person we have a grudge against, isn't it? Do you think they care? You're hurting yourself with that. Let that go. And again, is my life perfect? Of course not. No one's life is perfect. And maybe someone does have a perfect life, and I haven't met them yet. But everybody has challenges. Everybody has devastations. Everybody has grief and loss. And we can all allow joy also to be a part of that, and laughter to be a part of that, and forgiveness to be a part of that, and self-acceptance and kindness to ourselves and kindness to others. And you can still be a successful human being, a successful employee with that attitude.
So this is a burning question I have right now, because you've brought this up. You mentioned that going on this journey is exhausting.
Yeah.
how do you cope with the amount of energy it takes to go on that journey? Many people will say, I just don't have the energy
The journey
to
of
go on
reinvention?
that journey. How do you convince people that the energy you commit will be well worth the deliverables that will take place?
Because the energy suck of not living that more authentic life, it takes so much more energy in life out of you to live a life that is not what you know it can be.
The energy to keep doing what you're doing today is greater than the energy it will take to let go and let your journey come to you.
Yeah, if you know you're not living an authentic life, at least taking steps, little tiny baby steps to make your life more authentic, healthier, to create a life that you love. I mean, that's what I called my show. I kind of thought my show had a cheesy name, Deb Hart's Loving Life, because I didn't used to love my life. I used to hate my life. I used to hate who I was. I hated how I looked. I weighed 40, 50 pounds more than I do. I sat on the couch all the time. I drank way too much. I smoked cigarettes. I never exercised. I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. Sometimes I drink too much. Not proud of it, but I'm not gonna pretend that I don't. Sometimes I eat more than I want to or intend to. But it's healthier food than I used to eat, so there's that. But I move my body, and I found what works for me, and that's going for walks. It's sometimes going to the gym. I used to tell myself, I would see people running down the street and watch them and go, that's beautiful. I can never do that because that's not how I'm built. I don't have that frame. That's crap. That's a story I told myself.
Yes.
And when I began the health coaching program through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and was wanting to start this Loving Life show the first time, my fiance said to me, he goes, maybe you should try a 5K or something. So I signed up for it. And not just a 5K, because if you're going to go big and if you're going to fall on your face, you might as well. I did a sprint try, which was a 2-mile kayak, a 10, 12-mile bike ride, and then a 5K. It was the first inaugural event for the Grand Adventure in Grand Ledge. And by God, I did it. And I didn't die. and lo and behold, it was the first year, so there weren't that many people in the race. So, we left after we got our, here's your medal, you didn't die, go home kind of thing. And later I got in the mail this first place ribbon for my age category. I'm like, great, none of the other 40-year-olds showed up. So I was first place in my first race ever. That was, for someone to think that they're not a competitive athlete, to believe that for most of your adult life and to be in your early 40s and go,
I just won my age group.
I just want my age group. What? Who tells me I can't do this? I'm the one who told me I can't do this.
Apparently it's all in our head.
It is. Every story we have is what we created for ourselves.
It's the same loop going around and around. And what I have heard you say, and it's been very inspiring even for me to listen to, is the responsibility we have to ourselves to create our own meaningful journey.
Yes.
And that meaningfulness happens when we're willing to let go of what we have created thus far.
Yes.
And that the purpose, whether it's a company or an association or an individual, we have to start first with what is that meaning? What is it that I really want to accomplish? And as an adult in your early 20s, you began to go on that journey where the meaning of your life was being questioned.
Yeah.
You weren't sure what the answer was. We're never quite sure what the answer is supposed to be. We have just allowed the uncertainty to not scare us, but to embrace it, because that uncertainty is where there's also that opportunity.
Sure. And there can be so much joy and so much reward.
How important it is to not go on this journey alone, that there are all sorts of people that are a part of our support network that are just waiting for us to ask.
We have teachers around us every moment of every day. Everyone's idea and insight is of great value. No one's is of greater value than the other person's. We are all equal in terms of, I can learn as much from the guy standing behind the counter at the gas station as I can from a CEO. And I think it's a mistake to believe otherwise. Part of what I love so much about radio, broadcast radio that I've been doing for 25 years now in this market, is the wide variety of people I get to interact with. Everyone from carpenters to the guy who works at the sewer plant, to CEOs, to doctors, to lawyers, to businessmen and women, to business owners, it's just a mind-blowing array of people that I get to learn from every day, because everybody has something to teach us, and we all have something to learn from each other.
Now, it appears like that's what the model that you're using for Deb Hart's Loving Life is sharing these teachers that you run into in your journey.
For sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about that project, how people can access it, when it's available, and so that people who are curious can begin to follow your work?
Sure. They can just, Google debhartlovinglife.com, Deb Hart Loving Life, that's the podcast, that's the name of the website. It's basically the website's going to take you to the podcast. And it's, from social workers to friends who've made personal transformations. One of my favorite stories is my friend who got into his 50s. He'd been selling cars for 20 some years and was very successful at it, making a lot of money, and it was very stressful. His daughter had grown and married, but put her through college, and he's looked at his wife and they're like, well, when's that day, that someday? When is that someday going to be? And she's like, you've always loved massage. Why don't you go to massage therapy school? And so he did. And he became a licensed massage therapist. He's working at a very respectable facility, Creative Wellness, here in Lansing. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, understood that he wasn't taking very good care of himself physically, and he knew that. But, again, with those crazy hours, it's easy to preach. We need to eat good food, not at 10 o'clock at night, have a huge plate full of, and then go to bed on this big belly full of food that's, probably not the best choices of food, because when you get so hungry at the end of the day, we all know that routine. We've all been in that. He started eating better. He started exercising. He loves jazzercise. Whatever his deal is, he loves to dance. He loves jazzercise. So he, in the process of 2-3 year process, has lost 50 some pounds and has become the certified massage therapist and become a jazzercise instructor in his 50s.
I think the most important thing that I've learned today, Deb, is just the responsibility we have to take ownership.
Yeah.
And once we make that decision to take ownership, how we must just allow it to come to us, allow the world to actually create for us the opportunities that it had intended all along, even though we might have put barriers in the way and we haven't opened ourselves up to it. I think you're doing phenomenal work in this space. I think it's absolutely inspiring to hear you talk about all of this. And I know how important it is for individuals to be able to have people like you to follow and for you to lead. And I want to thank you for the remarkable work that you're doing in this leadership space of helping people through the reinvention process. It's fabulous work, and you're doing a fabulous job.
Thank you.
We've been listening to Deb Hart. Make sure you follow her, Deb Hart's Loving Life, well-known radio personality in the Mid-Michigan FM market, and we're very privileged to have had a chance to speak to her today. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
What an exciting interview, team. I've got to tell you, I really like listening to the Deb Hart story. Very, very, very inspirational. Jody, you had a really good point when you were talking about the intro that I'd like you to expand upon since the interview is now done.
Oh, the fear,
Yeah,
the idea of
absolutely.
fear and how to push through it.
Yes.
You had mentioned, it's really important that you have a navigator when you're going through a reinvention, because it is scary and it does take a lot of effort and energy. And sometimes you wonder if you can do this. And so that piece of it and how to push through the fear is that you don't do it alone. Mm-hmm. And I think many times when we are in uncertain situations, and Josh had mentioned this, that the natural instinct is to close yourself off.
Right.
And in reality, what you need to do, or what Deb recommends, is that you really open yourself up and you let others in.
Yeah, Josh, jump in there and take.
If she would have done it on her own, if she would have been by herself, when you typically go through things by yourself, where do you end up by yourself and alone and isolated?
Yeah.
Yeah, now go on and explain why it's so important to have that more team-based approach, Josh.
Well, in my experience, and I think this is where I started my journey of reinvention, it was when all of you came into my life that I went to a different place. And before, when you're trying to do it all on your own, you just can't get past those barriers. You can't see what's beyond you. And the navigator, whoever plays that role, or the group of people that play it, they just bring you to a different space where you can see beyond yourself and ultimately above and around yourself in a way that's just not possible if you're by yourself.
Why don't we do that on our own?
Because I think we're proud, and I think that we think we can research it and find the answer, and we expect quick solutions, and when we don't get quick solutions, we try another quick solution, and we end up not making progress. I mean, it's people who truly look for deep, pure, systemic reinvention and bring in others that get to a different place.
Will, what did you take out of this conversation?
Well, and I wanted to follow up, with the Amy Frankman interview we had, Amy was very proud, and she was in this position as an executive director that I should have all this figured out by now, and that by sharing our experiences and finding out that by communicating and talking, we realize we're all in the same boat, and it takes other people and outside input to be able to help you professionally like that. And our collaboration with this group and with this team has been one of the most exciting things I've had in my professional career too.
And Will, I want to jump in right after that, because sometimes I feel like we belabor the point that you're not alone point, but I think it needs to be belabored, because everyone that I'm looking at right now and all the voices you can hear out there in podcast land, we've all struggled with feeling like it's only up to us. Only we can see this through. Only we can take on this big task that we've said yes to. And it's just so not true. And Deb gives great examples in her life how she's felt the same way. Here I have these self-imposed barriers that I've created, that I've said, I'm this, I can't be that. And we all do that. Well, it's just crap.
Well, so we take that acceptance that other people give us, and then we have to work through that. And we have to decide and set a goal that we're not going to accept what other people have given us. I mean, that's what you all are telling me, is that there's something more out there that we have to aspire to be. So, Jody, how do we set our bar higher than what we would have done on our own?
Well, for me, I get pushed. I like to think I have a lot of self-confidence, and I have this belief that if I try hard enough, I can figure it out. But one of the big hurdles I struggle with is fear of the unknown. And so my tendency is to continue to do what has worked well and not try things that are new and scary, because I'm afraid of failure, honestly. And so for me to do things or to set the bar higher, it's because people I trust, people that I respect, people that love me for all my faults, push me to do it. Even though I'm kicking and screaming, they push me off the cliff, and then I figure out I can fly.
Misty, any last words as we think about this end of this podcast?
Really, it's just taking Deb's word of advice. It's be open. She learned to have a beginner's mind through yoga, but having a beginner's mind, however you learn it or however you decide to really embrace it, is critical to reinvention and critical to improving. Jody couldn't have opened up to that stuff without, her own beginner's mind and willingness to say, okay, maybe there are better options here. So that's a great takeaway in this whole interview.
I think all of us are beginning to learn that we have to have this great team of people around us who believe in us, who trust us, who push us, who encourage us, in order for us to really be all we can be. Misty?
I'm looking forward to next week, because you guys will get to hear a little more from the whole Pure Reinvention team. So don't forget, if you liked hearing our camaraderie, just wait until the next podcast. And remember, if you're ready to make a change, make it a change that lasts. Make it Pure Reinvention.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pure Reinvention. Keep the conversation going and get alerts when new podcasts are up by following us on Twitter @Pure Reinvention, or sign up for our mailing list at purereinvention.com.